Hi everyone, you are Reddit expose there, enjoy watching.
Every summer, when the New York sun burns the asphalt, I hear her laugh again. Emily. We drove around Brooklyn parks, young, naive, confident that forever was about us. I'm a guy who thought music would save him. She's a photographer with eyes that reflect the whole world. Life, of course, has rewritten everything. Her dream took her to Los Angeles. We tried to keep our distance, but the kilometers proved to be stronger. Our see you soon turned into a goodbye at the JFK terminal. Her eyes glistened with tears. Mine were full of despair. We hugged each other so tightly, as if we could stop time. They couldn't. The years passed. I caught her features in the faces of passers-by, stopping at every red strand, at every laughter bell, as if it were her. I go into our little cafe on the corner, take 2 cappuccinos, the second with cinnamon, as she liked, and put them in front of an empty chair. Stupid, probably, but it's easier to talk with silence this way. I write her letters that no one will read. I tell you about the little things of the day, about victories and failures, about how I miss her. I keep the photos like relics. Here we are on the beach, here in the rain, here holding hands on the bridge. Every frame is an injection and proof of what it was. For a long time, I thought she was just living her new life. Family, filming, premieres. And that's right. I learned to let go. I learned to thank. But one day the news came, and she was gone. The world instantly went deaf. Everything that used to be about surviving a breakup has become about surviving a loss. Since then, I have been living with a scar that does not heal. It has become a part of me, a map of the past, where every notch is an episode of our love, joy, stupidity, plans and pain. The nights are the hardest. I wake up feeling as if I feel her hand in mine. An illusion, but for a second I believe it. My dreams are torn apart. I search for her voice in the whisper of the wind, turn to each familiar silhouette and meet emptiness again. Sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy. I talk to her out loud on a park bench, on our hill overlooking the city. By the sea, where we caught sunsets. People look at me strangely, but I don't care. This is how I keep a thin thread between then and now. I get angry. I put up with it. I get angry again. On fate, on chance, on myself. And then I remember her kindness, her stubborn faith in the best, and the anger dissolves. I come to her in the cemetery, tell her how I lived my day, what flowers bloomed, what book she would love. Sometimes I swear I can feel the warmth of her gaze. Maybe it's just a memory, but she keeps me afloat. I'm trying to live the way she would like to. Work, laugh, learn to enjoy the little things. I go to places where we were happy and smile through my tears. Sometimes it seems that time heals nothing, it only dulls. The pain remains, it becomes an old acquaintance. I wear it like a heavy and precious stone. It presses on my chest, but it reminds me that I really loved. I often promise her the same thing. I will live for the two of us. I will look for beauty in everyday life, reach out to people, and carry its light further. When it's completely dark, I remember her laughter, the one that dispersed the clouds, and I have the strength to take another step. I'm learning not to run away from memory, but to walk alongside it. I'm learning to accept days without her and still choose life. Sometimes I see her in the crowd, I hear my name in the nose of the city, and for a moment I believe in a miracle. But the miracles are different now. It's a call from an old friend who's not asking for advice, but for a song. It's a sunset over the rooftops that she would definitely have shot. It's a child laughing in the park where we dreamed of the future. This is my thank you to her for that summer, for the lesson of loving without reserve, for the lighthouse to which you can go in any weather. I know she would like me to be happy. And I'm learning slowly, unevenly, with setbacks. I'm learning not to betray our love, not to turn it into a prison. I am learning to say yes to life, without ceasing to say I love her. In my most difficult moments, I climb our hill, watch the sun sink behind the city, and whisper, Emily, I'm going on. For your sake, for us. And I believe that somewhere out there, beyond pain and time, we will meet again. In the meantime, I'm carrying her light. I return the tools and calls. I live my life so that she can be proud of me. Emily, my echo of that summer, my eternal love, my light that doesn't go out. I started waking up a little earlier, before the heat, before the nose of the buses, while the city was still breathing quietly, like a sleeping child. The water is boiling in the kitchen, the window creaks, and in that pause between night and day, I talk to her again. Without pathos, "Good morning, Emily." I put down one cup. I don't order the second one anymore. Instead, I sometimes pay for coffee to a stranger in line. A small correction of the world that I seem to be able to make. One Sunday, I went into a thrift store on Fulton and bought an old film camera, a worn Strat, frosted glass, and the warm silence of someone's former life inside. The seller, an elderly man with a soft voice, said, "Something important was filmed on it. You can see by the scratches." I nodded. I wanted to continue following someone's good footsteps. I bought 3 rolls of black and white film and started walking around the city the way she walked, with attention. Facades where plaster is held together by stubbornness. The winds that blow the laundry flags. Dogs that drag their sleepy owners to the river. I caught the light at the intersections, the shadows on the stairwells, the twilight under the arches of the bridge. And every time I heard her, "Look, take your time. There's a story there." I started developing the film in a small laboratory on Atlantic. The guys taught me how to dry the frames on clothespins, wipe the water off the edges so that there would be no saliva. When the first prints lay on the table, grainy, crooked, but honest, I realized that I had found something that brought her closer without deceiving her. Not a memory, but a job. Action instead of impotent longing. On the anniversary, I took a chance and flew to Los Angeles. Cheap, with a transfer, with an old backpack, like a student. I wanted to see her light from the other shore. On the beach near Santa Monica, I stood barefoot and watched the warm water eat up the footprints. One evening I met a girl from her circle, a marker in the fields of life, not a plot. Her name is Marissa, and she assisted Emily onto sets. We were sitting in a diner, eating a pie that was too sweet, and talking about her as if she would walk out the door and say, "Well, let's go to the location." Marissa brought a small package, a pair of filters, a rubber hood, and a small notebook in a cage. She left it with me, in case you need it. I went to the ocean at night with this package and thought that memory is not bronze or granite. Memory is the stuff that hands reach for. I returned to New York and hung her little notebook over the table. On the first page, it says clumsily, "Look for silence in the nose." Under this are lists, arrows, dogs, diagrams of non-existent lighting schemes. I was flipping through the pages, and it was as if I could hear her pencil. That's how the idea was born. To make a tiny exhibition. No speeches or press releases. Just take 15 prints, mine and 2 of hers from the ones Marissa sent in numbers, and hang them in our cafe on the corner. I asked the barista if I could borrow the wall for a week. The barista smiled. "For 2. We just don't have time to repaint it." I called it the echo of that summer. Instead of prices, there is a transparent donation box for the school photo club on the price tags. Several friends came. A neighbor from the 3rd floor, a guy with a bicycle, a woman with a girl who asked why everything was gray in the photo. "Because that's how you can see the light," I said, and I was surprised at the answer. By the end of the 2nd week, there was enough in the box for 10 disposable cameras and chemicals for the school darkroom. I took the box to the teacher, we put the purchases in packages, and she suddenly whispered, "Thank you for remembering." I realized that this is the form of prayer that I have been searching for words to for a long time. In the evenings, I started going to a support group where people talk about those they've lost. Without dramatic pauses or great epiphanies, it's just a table, tea and paper cups, and phrases that form a bridge through the night. An older man remembered his wife. He wanted to sound dry, but he sounded lively. The girl talked about her younger brother and laughed through her tears, because he always made faces in family photos. I listened and felt my voice returning to my chest. When it was my turn, I said, "Her name was Emily." She taught me to see. That was enough. Sometimes despair creeps up anyway, like a draft. I walk across the Williamsburg Bridge. The wind blows in my face, and my heart turns inside out. Why not otherwise? Why not another year? There are no answers. Then I take off my glove, touch the cold metal of the railing with my palm, and whisper aloud, "I'm here. I'm going on." I don't expect the metal to respond. It's important to me that I answer myself. We rarely correspond with Emily's parents, the way strangers can. I sent them some prints from the exhibition, and they sent me a framed photo in response. Little Emily in rubber boots standing in a puddle and filming the sky on a plastic soap dish. At the bottom, her handwriting is signed in a child's handwriting. Is the sky in a puddle true? I put the frame on the windowsill, and when the morning sun hits the glass, it seems that it comes to life. I am learning to live not instead of, but together. Along with the absence, along with the memory, along with the new habit of noticing the light on the steps, I'm meeting up with friends again. I haven't been running away since the middle of the evening. Sometimes I laugh so loudly that I look around, as if I'm checking to see if it's okay. May. One such evening, a girl in a green scarf spent a long time choosing a cake, made a slip of the tongue, we both laughed, and we talked for 5 minutes, just about the weather and the movie. I did not take the number and did not invent signs. I just went home and thought that my heart was capable of withstanding conversations, laughter, and even pauses, and at the same time staying true to what had happened. In the spring, I shot a series of places where we were, but without us. Empty benches, a corner under a canopy where we hid from the rain, a bench by the river, on which she scratched my cheek with her fingernail, laughing that I was too serious. I signed each frame with one line from our old correspondence. No names, no dates. I took the set to the printing house and made a small zine. On the cover there are 2 strips of washi tape, as if holding the world together. I distributed zines to those who go to the group with me, left a few in the cafe with the inscription "Take it and pass it on." This is not art or a monument. This is the email that has finally been sent. I increasingly think that the word acceptance is not about accepting loss. It's about agreeing that love doesn't die, it just changes shape. I haven't stopped being bored. But this is no longer a wave that knocks you down, but a tide and ebb that you can live with. Every tide has its own things to do. Water the flowers, call my mother, develop the film, write to a friend, finish writing a letter that I'll read aloud to myself one day. One quiet evening, I went up to the roof of our house. It always smells of tar and someone's potatoes. I laid out her 2 filters on the ledge, the one that warms the skin, and the one that slightly dampens the neon. One rented a city with and without them. Then he put both pieces of glass in his palm, and said, "Thank you." The wind blew the clouds towards the river, and in them, for a very short time, a pattern appeared that she would definitely have seen first, as if the sky had tried to become the moon in its own puddle. Sometimes I come back to our hill. Dusk is settling on the roofs, children are shouting at each other. The last dogs are leading their people home. I sit and count to 100. The way she taught me to capture a frame. Give the world time to show what it wants to say. At 92, a window lights up somewhere below, and I pull the trigger. I think Emily would have liked this shot, and if not, she would smile and say, "Try again. You can do it." I do not know if it will ever be easy, but it definitely became fair. I no longer argue with emptiness. I leave her a chair, sometimes a cup, more often a place in the story. I go forward with her name inside, not as an anchor, but as a compass. And when summer starts to burn New York again, I will, as always, hear the bell of her laughter in the park. I'll turn my head and not look for it with my eyes. I'll just smile and whisper, "I'm here. I hear you. I'm filming." And I will go on, exactly as long as there is enough light. I began to measure the days not by the clock, but by the light. The morning is milky, as if the city is still not sure whether to wake up. Midday, cutting, which turns shadows inside out. The evening one is the one in which her laughter rang once in Brooklyn parks. I'm learning not to chase the past, but to focus on what's in front of me. On Wednesdays I lead a free circle in the school darkroom. The room smells of vinegar and warm water. Fresh prints are swaying on the rope. Thin tracks are flowing down from them. Saliva, as I was taught. Together with the guys, we made a pinhole camera out of an oatmeal box, a needle, electrical tape, paper, and suddenly an inverted world appears on the matte surface. The bow with the curls exhaled. "It's like magic," I said. "This is physics, and a little love." I caught myself speaking in her voice. At the cafe on the corner, we left a box with a sign saying, "Take it, leave it." Everyone can put a small imprint and a line of history. To whom he dedicated the frame. Sometimes it's a cat, sometimes it's a grandmother, sometimes it's by himself at 12. In the evenings, I sort through these cards, lay them out on the table like other people's letters, and realize that everyone has their own echo of that summer. We just rarely give him the floor. One day, an envelope letter from a barista who worked back in the days when Emily and I took to cappuccinos every weekend was in the mailbox. He said that one day she left him a light diagram on a napkin for a completely ordinary portrait. He applied a napkin. There are curved arrows on it, and the caption, "Look for silence in nose." The same phrase as in her notebook. I hung the napkin next to the notebook as a side note. Emily's parents wrote that they had found a box with her contact sheets and did not know what to do with it. They asked if I could help them scan it. I was sitting in their kitchen, drinking tea from thick mugs, listening to my father rustle the newspaper, and my mother quietly asking if I was cold. We went through sheet after sheet, the magnifying glass sliding over the tiny frames. There was a bridge on one, a window on the other, and suddenly I recognized myself in the tiny reflection of the showcase, a dark spot with her hand raised. She was filming, and I was waving at her through the glass. In the field next to her pencil, see, I laughed and burst into tears at the same time. They silently put their hand on my shoulder, a gesture from which there is no need to hide. A new idea was born from these sheets, to make diptychs then. Now, I went to the same places, looked for the same angles, caught the light for about the same hour. A couple of shots didn't match, the houses were demolished. The signs changed their names and that made sense too. I printed a risography in the printing house. Blue, lime, black. On the back there is one of her lines, one of mine. We had a little pop-up at the cafe window. There was a jar of school fixer on the table. Next to it was a pack of washi tape to seal the world, if anything. Sometimes desperation finds its cracks anyway. On days like these, I go up to the roof and take pictures of the city through her old filters. I watch how the warm ones make the skin a little softer, and the dark ones cut off excess neon. I whisper, "Thank you," put the glass back in the case, and go down to the people. I notice that when my hands are occupied with frames, clothespins, cords, the pain does not disappear, but ceases to command. Marissa from Law sent a voicemail. Emily always left room for breathing in the frame. Do you remember? I reply. Now. Yes. On the same day, he wrote on a large piece of paper, leave space, and attached it next to the notebook. I caught myself pausing more often in the conversation. Don't run to fill the silence with unnecessary words. In silence, someone else finds himself too. Together with the support group, we made a reading night. Everyone brought a short text about those who were not there. I read Emily's letter, written on tracing paper. The thin sheet trembled in my fingers. The words shone on the table like light on a negative. No one applauded. They just poured tea. The woman in the blue sweater said softly, "It was like a light that knows where to go." I wrote this phrase down in the margins of my notebook. These are the phrases I use to measure weeks now. In winter, for the first time in a long time, I went to the ocean in a blizzard. Rockaway was empty. The sand was ringing with ice. I set up a tripod, soaked my sneakers, and was frozen to the bone, but I caught a shot in which the wind was drawing slanting strokes across the water. Is the sky in a puddle true? Little Emily looked at me from the frame. Yes, truth. And also, patience. I began to return more often to where we once were, but not to torture myself, but to check if I could now see without pain. On our bench by the river, an elderly woman with a cane sat down next to me. I asked what I was filming. I showed him the screen and told him about the project. She nodded and said, "I don't take pictures anymore, but I'm still watching the footage." We sat in silence for about 10 minutes. As she left, she added, "Look further ahead." It sounded like a blessing. With a teacher from school, we came up with a scholarship for one reel of film, the name of Emily. A small amount, but with a story. Anyone who writes a small text can receive it, to whom he will dedicate his 36 frames. We sat down to read the applications, to my grandmother, who taught me how to bake bread, to our yard, to myself, if suddenly I grow up. I handed the first reel to the girl with the scythe. She held the box like a bird's egg and hesitated to put it in her pocket for a long time. I thought, this is what memory looks like when it's passed on. Closer to spring, I posted a new series of empty seats before people, benches before people sit on them, stairs before steps, table before cups. The caption shows only the time and the weather. People are used to faces, but I wanted to show a pause. The barista said, "Your photos are breathing now." I reply, "I just stopped shouting at them." Sometimes I find myself wanting to call her, not because I believe in a handset without a wire, but because talking to her always turned off background noises. Now I'm calling the quietest person on my list, an old friend who knows how to listen to the sea. We talk about nothing. 10 minutes about a new lens, 5 about a good bakery, and that's enough to keep us from falling into the usual funnel. One evening, a girl in a green scarf came into the exhibition, the same one from the last sweet conversation at the showcase. I watched the diptychs for a long time, then I asked, "And how do you choose the moment?" I reply, I'm counting to 100. She smiled. It's like learning to breathe again. We talked some more. I wasn't looking for signs in this. I just remembered how she said again, calmly, without promises, "That's enough." With Emily's parents, we did a little family ritual. Once a month, I bring them 3 prints, 2 of my own, one from her archive, and they choose what to hang on the wall by the window. Once I was afraid of this wall, as if I would take away their air. Now I understand. We are not dividing, we are adding. In our arithmetic, memory is not a fixed amount, but a sprout that stretches towards the light. I still wake up too early and say into the dark, "Good morning, Emily." Sometimes that's all that's needed. Sometimes you need a walk to the bakery, a conversation at the window, 3 shots at the corner of Franklin and DeKalb, a cup of paid coffee for a stranger, a letter on tracing paper to yourself. I return home, put the camera on the table, check the light by the window, open the aperture, and let the world enter. I no longer have to choose between saving and moving. It turns out that you can go forward without taking out a small, worn and heavy stone from your pocket, her name. It doesn't pull you down. It reminds you where to go back with your eyes when everything blurs. I climb our hill and count to 100. On the 92nd, a window lights up again. I pull the trigger and smile. Try again, I hear. And I'm trying. Every day. Spring came not with a calendar, but with light. It suddenly became bouncy like a ball, from wall to wall, from the window to the cup, from my hand to the camera strap. I found myself waiting for morning again, not out of stubbornness, but out of curiosity. Will it be milky or sparkling today? In a thrift store in Bedford, I came across another film soap dish. The salesman turned it over in his hands and said, "There seems to be something inside." At home, in the dark of the bathroom, I felt the real. However, there was a filled film in the camera. I handled it carefully, like someone else's letter. Someone's holidays appeared on the contact sheets. The beach, cardboard crowns, Coney Island, 1998, or so. The date moved out. A girl with a kite, a man with a cake, and Nat with big sunglasses. The last shot shows a table bathed in light and a ballpoint pen inscription on a tablecloth. "Summer, don't leave." I put the best prints on our take it and leave it table with the sign, "We are looking for the owners of this story." 3 days later, an elderly woman and her nephew cautiously looked in the door. "It looks like our Aunt Rita. You. Where did this come from?" We sat and drank coffee. They called out names, and each letter brought the living back into the frame. When I gave them the envelope, the woman stroked the pictures and said, "Thank you for bringing me home." I went outside and stood with my back to the wind for a while to remember the feeling, as if the world had a return address. On Wednesdays, the school dark lives a separate life. We learn the ritual. Before turning out the lights, one of the guys repeats the steps of the process aloud. Not because we forget, but because it makes you less afraid of the dark. One day, the stop ended, and we flooded the sink. The water ran over the edge. The children rushed. I took a deep breath and said, "We're counting to 100 and doing one thing at a time." We bailed out the water with a bucket, opened the window, and rescued the drying frames. The next day, a new line of rules appeared on the board. Panic is also a developer, only a bad one. Nearby, someone added in pencil, "Look for silence in the nose." Emily's parents invited me to lunch. The same thick mugs, soup in a large pot, an old blanket on the back of a chair. We scanned her contact sheets, and then we were silent for a long time. A good silence where you can hear spoons and leaves outside the window. My mother asked if I wanted to choose some shots for their hallway. I chose a bridge, a window with a curtain, and that funny reflected shot of me waving through a storefront. My father hung up, took a step back, and said, "He breathes better this way." I nodded. Sometimes words are not needed. Marissa and I came up with a slide projector night. We took an old carousel, found slides on the Craigslist, baked cookies, called the neighbors. We clicked around, and not only her shots change on the wall, but also someone else's, someone's mountains, someone's cats, someone's windows from the 1970s. On the registration form, one girl in a green scarf wrote, "Sophia." She came over afterwards and asked me how I chose the moment. I said, "I hear the frame calling." We both laughed. It sounded ridiculous, but it was true. I didn't ask for a number. I just wrote in the margins, "Sophia." Green scarf laughs with her eyes. Memory is no longer a leash, but a catalog of soft labels. My teacher and I have launched a scholarship named after her. Emily's 36 frames. These little boxes of film are like matches that ignite attention. The first recipient, a girl with a tight braid, rented her grandfather's house, empty. Before the sale, empty chairs, the shadow of the chandelier, a corner of the carpet, sign on the back, to remember how apple jam smells. I held her picture and thought, that's the point. Photography is not beautiful, it is not to lose. We made a second version of Echo of that summer, before people and after people, empty benches, and the same shops an hour later, when someone has already sat down. The stairs to the steps are the same stairs with footprints, like notes. The labels only show the time and the weather. The barista said, "Your signatures are even breathing." I reply, "That's because I stopped convincing, but started showing." Sometimes it covers you anyway. I go out onto the Williamsburg Bridge, put my fingers on the cold metal, and admit out loud, I'm scared. I'm not waiting for an answer. That the wind seems to pause every time, and there is enough space in this pause to breathe in. I go downstairs and buy 2 bagels, one for myself, and leave the other on a plate in a cafe with a note. If it's bad, it'll pass. Stupidity, maybe, but the same nonsense helped me once. With the support group, we made an evening of voices of those who are not there. I brought a letter on tracing paper, the one in which for the first time I was able to write to her thank you without why. They listened carefully. The woman in the blue sweater, the one who once said about a light that knows where to go, gave me a small clothespin with her initials burned into it, so that the pictures don't fall. She smiled. I taped it to the tape under Emily's notebook. It's a small thing, but now the eye clings every time, like an anchor that is always at hand. One day, a letter came from the park department. Our application for a nameplate was approved. I took a long time to choose a line and settled on it. Look for silence in the noise. My neighbors, Emily's parents, and the guys from the dark came to the park with a small ceremony for 2 minutes. Someone brought daisies, someone brought disposable cameras. The children whispered to each other. Sophia held a screw in her palms like a jewel. When the sign was fixed, we just sat down and counted to 100. At 92, the window on the corner lit up, and I pulled the trigger. The world likes to repeat itself when it matters. There is a map of the area in our cafe. I marked with pins the places where the project lives. Dark, a printing house, my parents' house, a shop, a laboratory on Atlantic, thrift stores with film finds. The guy with the bike saw the card. Is this a memory card? More like a map of the world, I said. He shrugged, but later returned with a box of old photography magazines. Maybe someone will need it. It came in handy. The bow with curls cut out light patterns from there and pasted them on thick cardboard. We made a stand called Light as Furniture. Laughter. But it works. Sometimes I still talk to her, not for the tragedy, but to distribute the sounds inside. Emily. It was snowing well today. Look how the fog is holding up by the embankment. The girl with the scythe did it. And sometimes, it's hard for me. And still. Thank you. This form of gratitude turned out to be the most honest way not to spill what was worth loving for. Sophia started coming on Wednesdays, helping to put up the prints, signing the cards in an even handwriting. One day she asked, "Can I take it off? How do you count to 100? We went out onto the porch. I thought she was filming. At 49 someone dropped the lens cap, at 62 a passerby laughed, at 80 a bus passed, at 92 in the neighboring house someone lit a floor lamp, and she pressed. Is that fair? She asked. Very much. I reply. We don't invent signs. We notice the ones that are already there. Emily's parents sometimes send me her short notes from notebooks, scraps of receipts with scribbles. Taking off the janitor is the heroism of everyday life. Don't forget about warm socks. The light on the left is like music. I've spread them out on the table under glass, and anyone can read them. Other people's lists are a surprisingly intimate thing. They make distant relatives better than any biographies. At school, the guys and I assembled a camera tent, a dark room on wheels that can be taken out into the courtyard. On a sunny day, we dragged half the class there. The inverted courtyard came to life on a white sheet. The top of the bike was at the bottom. The children were laughing, recognizing themselves in the stream of light spots. It's like being inside an eye, said a quiet boy with glasses. I nodded. Exactly. Sometimes I'm still drawn to that bridge, to the cold metal of the railing. But now it's not an escape, but a route. I know where I'm going to stop, where I'm going to listen to the wind, where I'm going to say to myself, I'm here. On the way back, I buy pastries and leave one bun for whoever needs it. In the evening I see that she is not there. Someone took it, and maybe it made him feel half a tone better. These half-tones seem to make up the music of the day. I keep releasing zines. The latter is called Places Before People. The circulation is ridiculous. 100 pieces. Half of it was taken apart in a cafe, and the guys and I scattered half of it in the mailboxes of the houses where we rented. On the inside page is the same sign on the bench. Someone wrote in pencil next to it, "Sat down." I counted it. On the 92nd, Mom called. I smiled. That's how memory works, like a bell that always keeps up. Sometimes I dream that I'm walking along the embankment with her. We don't talk because everything has already been said. She looks over my shoulder into the light. I try to see what's there, and I wake up not from pain, but from the desire to live. I'll put water on, put the kettle on, open the window, check the light on the windowsill. I'll say, "Good morning, Emily," and I'll go on the day to where I have something to do. I no longer divide the world into with her and without her. The world became with her, in a different way. And every time summer starts to burn New York again, I'll walk through the park, hear the bell of her laughter, and I won't look back. I'll just lift the camera, count to 100, and pull the trigger at 92. That's enough to remember. That's enough to keep going. Summer has rolled up on our doorstep again. Sticky, dusty, with eternal sidewalk repairs and the hum of air conditioners on the facades. I caught myself doing the usual thing, feeling for the small stone in my pocket, her name, and checking if it was still there, in place, so we can move on. In the school darkroom, we grew up to color. The guys brought mismatched coals, someone managed to get an expired Agfa, and the whole room breathed chemicals that stung their eyes and made them smile. We argued for a long time about the temperature regime. It was cold, then hot, the skin on our fingers wrinkled like swimmers, but when the first honest color frame hung on the dryer, orange sneakers on blue linoleum, hand shadow, the room became quiet. Silence is the one she taught to find in no's. We made another zine with the printing company, Before People, After People, color, a small print run, as always. On the centerfold there is a bench before and a bench after, a staircase before and after, a table before and after. Next to it are not comments, but tasks. Count to 100 and click on 92. Mark how the area is changing. The girl with the site brought her copy a week later, all scratched out in pencil. Ticks, arrows, hearts. She said, "It's easier to watch that way." Emily's parents and I have started a new tradition. One evening a month, a little lecture, not about the great names, but about ours. About the janitor who films sunrises on a push-button phone. About the kid from the bakery who draws diagrams of light on napkins. We put a projector on the table, pin a sheet to the curtain, and cut a pie. The neighbors bring their stories, and the hallway is filled with voices that you don't want to pause. Emily's father once said, "This is how the house gets windows inside as well." I wrote it down. The take-leave box has accumulated other people's children's photos. I made a separate house for them, an album with transparent pockets and a sign. Bring yourself back. People come, flip through, and find other people's knee abrasions, plastic crowns, and school rulers. Sometimes someone picks up his own and recognizes the signature on the back, the crooked smile. They are not always returned. And that's right, each photo has its own route. Sophia Green's scarf started staying late on Wednesdays more often. We put up prints, put down blank paper, and argue about how much air to leave in the frame. She laughs with her eyes, just like that first time, and to my own surprise, nothing breaks inside me. Maybe this is a sign that I'm living with her, in a different way. One evening, Sophia brought a voice message. "Shall we take a walk?" Without words. We walked a block in silence. I counted to 100. She took pictures on her phone. Then we changed. On the 92nd, a lamp came on in the window as always, as if the city was playing along. We looked at each other and nodded at the same time. No promises, just a frame. One day, I received an email from the district library. "Would you like to hold a workshop? Our reading room is empty on Saturdays. Want?" The guys and I brought tripods, extension cords, and a camera tent on wheels. On the first date, 7 people came, 3 school children, 2 pensioners, a woman with a baby, and a guy who said he was tired of talking and wanted to watch. We learned to measure silence in decibels of breath. At the end, the man with the gray beard whispered, "You gave me back the street." I nodded, because that was exactly the phrase for which it was worth dragging a heavy extension cord from home. Park finally put a sign on our bench. Look for silence in Knows Now lives not only in a notebook, but also in metal. I sit next to them and watch as people read, smile, and run their fingers over the letters as if checking to see if they're going to wash away. It won't wash off. Sometimes someone sits down and counts out loud, 20, 21, as if trying to catch the rhythm of the city. I like that it has become not mine, but common. In a thrift store in Bedford, I found an old 50mm lens with a scratch that gives a ghost in the side light. The seller said, "Marriage," and I thought, the imprint of history. We named her Rita after the ant from the found film. Rita has a character. She doesn't like direct noon and loves windows. The guys take turns filming the heroes of everyday life. A hairdresser, a seamstress, a mechanic. On the back of the print is the name, profession, and one phrase of the person. The hairdresser said, "People don't come to cut off their hair, but their excess." Mechanic, cars are listened to more often than they are repaired. These phrases hang in the cafe next to the cups, like strings that you can pull if it gets empty. A support group once suggested making a night of blunders, to bring not successful shots, but those that did not come out. We brought a handful of waste, overexposure, smudge, fingers in the frame. They laughed, cursed, and recalled the circumstances under which it happened. I showed him a picture where a raindrop got into the lens and turned the lantern into a milky spot. The woman in the blue sweater said, and I would have hung it up, and suddenly became easy, as if we had lifted a bag of obligatory perfection from our shoulders. Sometimes, when everything is strangely fading, I turn on my old phone, where there is only one short voicemail from Emily. Take a scarf, there will be a wind. And please don't waste the light. This is such a household detail, in which you can hear much more than a request for a scarf. I don't listen to him often, only when I need to remember that caring sounds exactly like that. Simple, accurate, and on time. The Emily's 36-frame scholarship is slowly gaining in history. The boy with curls took off the little vines, curtains that sway, bags on branches, the dog's tongue sticking out towards the air. He wrote on the back, so as not to forget that everything is moving. The girl with the sigh returned to the houses and removed the traces of absence. A mug with a lipstick print, an iron in an outlet without light, a hanger with one jacket. To remember what it's like to wait. I take their work to the printing house, and every time I feel like I'm carrying a fragile living thing, like seeds in paper bags. Sophia suggested filming lessons of the 90-second. We sat down and wrote 10 simple rules. Leave a pause, count to 100, don't fill the void with words, look for silence in the nose, don't be afraid of mistakes, sign the back, share your tools, return what you took, be kind to chemistry and people, take off the air. It was printed on thin paper and attached to the wall. Sometimes I find myself reciting them like a mantra, not for art, but for myself. The shop in the park is gradually overgrown with its own rituals. Someone leaves flowers there. Someone. Photos. Someone. A note found a cat. Call. I take the excess to the cafe so that it doesn't turn into a dump. And every time I ask myself, where is the boundary between the monument and life? So far, we can keep the bounds. If something prevents us from sitting, we carefully remove it. If it helps, we leave it until the sun burns out. Memory is not a museum, but a vegetable garden. It needs to be watered, weeded, and sometimes allowed to grow as it wants. The library and I started a projection night. A white courtyard wall, a projector, an extension cord through the window, blankets. The faces of the houses opposite straightened out as the slides fell on them. Windows, hands, benches, water, and bruised knees. People stopped and asked if it was still possible tomorrow, May. On the third evening, a man in a work uniform came up and said, "You're here, so you're glowing." Thank you. I wrote this phrase down in my notebook, next to all the others who find me, and I'm not looking. Sometimes it seems to me that I have found a new unit of time, up to 92. This is a very convenient measure. It fits a conversation, a breath, a street crossing, an imprint. If something doesn't fit, then you need to save it for later. Emily would have loved it. Simple frames that show the essence. My parents and I are slowly filling the hallway. They learned to argue about frames the way they argue about spices in soup. A little more air. No, let's leave it denser. One day my father said, "You know, I used to be afraid that photos would attract pain. And now I get it. They're pulling the light." I nodded. That seems to be it. I still wake up early. I'm still saying good morning to her. I still leave the paid coffee to someone invisible. I'm still holding Rita in my palm and smiling at her whims. Sometimes in my dreams I walk with her along the embankment, without words, with that soft wind that promises good weather. I wake up not from emptiness, but from the desire to make it to the light. I pour water, put the kettle on, open the window, check the camera. I write in the margins, don't waste the light. And I go on a day where someone will definitely count to 92 and light a lamp in the window. That's enough to remember. That's enough to live on. August has warmed up to a state of continuous humming. It seems that the air itself is listening to the air conditioners. I still wake up before the light, still feel the little stone in my pocket, her name, and whisper the familiar, "Good morning, Emily." The water in the kettle sings, the window creaks, and the world becomes simple for a couple of minutes. Inhale, exhale, light. They gave us another Saturday room in the library. If you don't make noise, we don't make any noise. A camera tent, dark cloth on the windows, a lawn extension cord through the hallway, quiet voices. In the third lesson, a man in a bright orange robe approached, a janitor from the next block. He put an old soap dish on the table and said, "I'm filming sunrises, but no one believes it's me." We showed it. The prints show simple roofs, pigeons, steam from ventilation, the sun on the glass. I took the first sheet out of the tray and said, "Now they believe." He nodded and did not hide his smile. At the end of the lesson, he gave us a pack of garbage bags for any occasion. We laugh, but the packages really come in handy. The world loves objects with multiple meanings. In the school darkroom, we reach cyanotypes. The guys pull out frames with illuminated paper on the roof, lay out leaves and keys, grains of sand and shoelaces. The sun does its own thing. A girl with a side signs with a pencil, the keys to August. The bow with curls is traces of the wind. They argue about how long to hold, until 92. And laugh. Now it's not only about the shutter, but also about patience. I find that my hands no longer shake when I leave time to work. Sophia began to bring thin transparent files, pockets for voices. We put a small print and a short phrase of the person from the frame into each one. A hairdresser, a mechanic, a janitor, a barista, a teacher, a woman in a blue sweater. The pockets hang on a rope, and you can move them around to assemble your own series. One bow made up a city that breathes. Windows, thresholds, benches, coats, hands. He wrote at the bottom, so as not to forget that there are many of us. I took a picture of this rope, but I didn't hang it up. The living live better in motion. One morning, I came to our store earlier than usual and saw that the sign had been scratched. It wasn't rude. It was just that someone was trying to put their name on top of her words with a key. I stood there, ran my finger, and sighed. In the evening, I called the guys, Sophia, and Emily's parents. We brought soft polish, toothpaste, and an old toothbrush. They worked in silence, as in a dark room. Soft circles, water, a napkin. The scratches didn't completely disappear, but they became part of the surface, like wrinkles on the palm of your hand. I said, "Memory is not glass, but wood." The father nodded. "The prettiest thing about a tree is that it is touched." We left a small sticker next to it. "If you want to leave a mark, have a seat. Count to 100. You'll do well on the 92nd. We made another zine with the printing company, letters that can be carried away. There are empty spaces on the postcards, people and phrases that we have collected in our pockets. On the reverse side there is a place for the address. People take it, sign it, send it. One woman brought us a photo. Her mother holds a postcard stairs to steps against the background of the kitchen. It is signed, so as not to forget how we went to buy bread. That was the first time I saw how our narrow stories go further than the neighborhood. In a thrift store in Bedford, fate smiled at me. There was an old cassette recorder in the window. The seller said, "Check it out, it's shaking, but it's wheezing." I bought it, lubricated the head, and rewired the wire. At home, he pressed rec and recorded his list of lessons of the 92nd on an empty tape. Sophia and the guys and I agreed. Sometimes we'll write sound instead of pictures. At the first night listening, we listened to the tram, the breathing in the dark, the rustle of cyanotypes, how paper moves in the developer, how the projector clicks. The woman in the blue sweater said, "It's still photos, just for the ears." I wrote it down. Emily's parents brought a box of her old postcards. On one is a short note to me. "Take a scarf. There will be a wind. And don't waste the light." I've been saving my old phone with her voicemail for a long time, but it seems to be the last one. I sat down at the table, turned on the recorder and recorded the voice into the tape. I listened to it a couple of times and realized that I can live with a tape recording as calmly as with a phrase on paper. It is not the thing that is important, but the content. I still don't turn it on often. But just the thought that the voice lives in a magnetic layer makes the world a little denser. We organized a rewind night in the park. We gathered with a bunch of empty reels, old films, bags, and tape. We learned how to rewind smoothly without crumpling the edges. Laughter, concentrated foreheads, clicks, rustling. The girl with the site said, "Rewind is about how not to break the past." And I couldn't find a better formulation. The library invited us to the Long Wall, a month of screenings in a large hall. They asked for an author's statement. I sat down, wrote 3 sentences, and rewrote them 10 times until there was only one left. Look for silence in the nose. I brought it, gave it away, and realized that I was no longer afraid of short forms. It turns out that sometimes the best thing to do is not to explain. The heat burst into the dark room. The chemistry was boiling. The thermometer was stubborn. We've changed our schedule. We work early in the morning, from 6 to 8. The guys come in sleepy, in oversized hoodies, carrying buns. Someone reads aloud a to-do list. Someone is silent. I open the window for a crack, and we breathe steadily. In these morning hours, I hear her phrase especially clearly. Don't waste the light. It gets funny because we literally use up lumens to get a blueprint. But it's not about saving, it's about attention. The map of the area in the cafe is getting thicker with pins. There's a new location, Matt the mechanic's garage. The guys are filming a workshop of sounds, wrenches, the hiss of a compressor, rags on a nail. Matt leaned out from under the hood and said, "You have a museum of life here." I reply, "More like a vegetable garden." He was surprised. But in the evening he brought us a box of gloves to take care of our hands. Sophia asked one evening, "Have you ever been considered faster?" I understood what she was talking about. Yes. Sometimes you want to click on 49 or 62 and grab it while you still have it. We went out to the river and stood at the railing. I counted out loud to 100, taking my time. At 92, a fisherman's cigarette lit up, and he waved at us. Sophia smiled. The city is catching up anyway. We returned, and I realized that it was just an evening. Not a promise, not a plot. An evening that holds easily in the palm of your hand. The support group suggested an evening of letters that we will send. Not to those who are not there, we write to them anyway, but to those who are alive. To myself, a 12-year-old, a neighbor, a father, a teacher. I wrote a letter to myself the day we said goodbye at JFK. No speeches, just a list. Don't be shy to ask for help. Call your parents. Don't argue with silence. Keep the film cool. Don't waste the light. Loving doesn't mean grabbing. I sealed it and signed, "I'll give it to you on occasion." The woman in the blue sweater said, "It's a good post." We nodded, because we knew that sometimes letters go on for years.